Clarita here, and I've got a new sponsor, DistroKid. If you want to release your music into the world, DistroKid's the easiest way to get your music into all the major streaming platforms, unlimited uploads, and keep 100% of your royalties. And because you're a Design Freaks listener, you get 30% off. Go to distrokid.com/VIP/designfreaks. DistroKid. Hello, everyone. This is the Design Freaks podcast. Thank you for listening. My name's Clarita, and I am the host. This is episode 55 with artist and musician Zak Sally. Zak was one of the members of the band Low, and I just wanted to give a heads up that we recorded this episode on Friday, November 4th, pretty early in the day, and that was the day before founding member of the band Low, Mimi Parker, or Mim as Zak refers to her, passed away. So I just wanted to make that clear, and I'm going to play an intro that Zak sent me after we recorded to give some context. But I also want to extend my condolences to all of her friends and family, to Alan, of course, and to Zak. And Alan captioned a photo of her that day after. He says, friends, it's hard to put the universe into language and into a short message, but she passed away last night, surrounded by family and love, including yours. Keep her name close and sacred. Share this moment with someone who needs you. Love is indeed the most important thing. So you can find that and a really cool photo of her on the official Low Facebook and Instagram. And then Zak has also written one hell of a piece about Mimi and their friendship and all those years they spent together touring, etc. I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go check that out, read what he wrote. You can find that also on the official Low Instagram or Facebook. And it is such a beautiful homage. I did cry a lot. She was even way cooler than I thought from listening to the records and seeing them live. And yeah, in just a second, I'm going to play that audio that Zak sent. But first, I wanted to thank Josh Lackey. He's one of my oldest friends in Seattle, and he introduced me to Low's music. His love for the band and for their records was so infectious. I think that that's what helped to unlock and sort of, that's how I got it. You know, sometimes friends can do that. So I really appreciate that. And we went to that Crocodile show together that me and Zak talk about in this episode. So yeah, I just wanted to shout that out. We also talk in this episode about how, you know, with those records, early records and touring at the time, how being quiet seemed so rebellious in the noisy 90s. But they cut through that noise, through authenticity and just hauntingly beautiful music. I think that's why people were so drawn to them, something that was needed and missing in the world. And then in this episode, we also talk about, like, what's the purpose of art? And it's really obvious now. I mean, Mimi gave so much to the world. And the sense of connection that band created is real. I'm so thankful I got to talk to Zak. We talked about a lot, including the stories behind the Low album covers, his life, his creative trajectory. And I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you take Alan's words to heart. Read Zak's piece. Loved meeting you, Zak, and thank you, Alan. And thank you so much, Mim. So here is Zak's intro, and then you will hear our interview.
All right, everyone. I just wanted to record a quick forward to the interview that you're about to hear, Clarita and I had been trying to get this interview going for quite a while, and when I landed in Seattle on Friday for Short Run, we just thought we'd bang it out. But given Mim's passing, I just want to give a brief thing so this interview doesn't seem tone deaf or disrespectful. I mentioned Alan Mim a couple times in the interview. I had seen them the previous week, and I knew that things were rough with Mim. But obviously that wasn't anything I was going to talk about in any kind of public forum in any way. And actually, shortly after this interview, I got a message from Alan that things had taken a turn, and the next day she was gone. In the days after, I felt kind of compelled to write something for and about Mim, which I did, and then I had to run it past a couple people, and I guess by the time this interview goes up, it should be up on the Low Facebook page. So if you have any interest in reading that, you should go ahead and do it. And with that said, like I said, this keeps shifting and changing, as it will for everyone who knew Mimi Parker, either personally or through Low, or through seeing Low, or anything along those lines. For me, I think after this, I'm gonna just sit quietly with it for as long as I need to, and maybe you should too. All right, thank you. Take care.
Hi, Zach.
Hi, Clarita.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Ish, I met you yesterday. We're off to a great start. Welcome to my show. Thank you so much for doing this while you're in town.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. We are in the Ruinous Media Studios, and this is, just have to mention, the first time ever for my podcast to record an episode here. So it's a momentous occasion. It's also my 4-year anniversary of the podcast. Woo-hoo! Thank you very much. And I only have 55 episodes somehow, but quality over quantity is what I say. I want you to tell the audience like why you're in town, because I think it's cool and exciting, but maybe just introduce yourself to my listeners, how they would have seen your work, etc.
Sure. I am in town for one of the best comics festivals. Well, I mean, weirdo comics festivals in the country. There's a lot of sort of mainstream comics festivals, but there's a couple that are sort of the small press weirdo stuff. And the one here is called Short Run, which I think this is either its 10th year or 11th year.
All right.
And it's fantastic. So I actually, 2 years ago, pre-COVID, was the first time I was able to make it out to Short Run, and it was everything people said it was. So I'm here for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And you are illustrator, artist. How do you define yourself? You're a musician. What's your bio?
Yeah. My bio is pretty tough to describe.
Yeah.
I've always made comics, been making comics since I was 13 or 14, making zines and so on and so forth. And then I'm 51 right now, so kind of what I feel like is maybe the pinnacle or the apex of the American underground scene, which coincided with in the same sort of ecosystem as the zine scene and just this era, I think, where a lot of people were making art and making music and making design, and it was all sort of in this big melting pot of people just doing shit for themselves for their own purposes,
Right.
So I'd always been doing that my whole life, and then in 1992 or 3, I found myself living in the West Coast in Oakland, kind of in the belly of that punk rock scene, and my two of my oldest friends, I'm from Duluth, Minnesota, and two of my oldest friends, Alan and Mimi, had started a band called Low. And they gave me a call to see if I would want to do sound for them on one of their first tours. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And they were like, you'll figure it out. It'll be fine. And I didn't. It was terrible. Like the worst. It's an ongoing joke of like, man, I can't do the buttons and knobs. But I did that tour doing sound for them, and then their original bass player left, John Nichols. He's a great guy. And I joined Low, and I was in Low from 1993, 1994 until I left in 2005.
Oh, wow. I saw you play then.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I saw you at the old Crocodile.
Oh.
The old location. Yeah.
Where's the new Crocodile?
It's, I believe, a couple blocks over. I haven't been yet, but it's still in Belltown.
Okay.
Yeah, still in that same area of town. But the legendary old diner style, venue where there's a column in the way and you can't see half the show.
Yeah.
That's where I saw you guys play. It was awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have a divergent story from playing there, but I don't think we can.
Uh-oh.
I don't think we can tell it. You're going to have to keep me away from diversions.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Edit that.
No, I love it all. Yeah, so you were in Low. Did you do any of the artwork for the band?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where most of my overlap for, for this might come in. I did. To me, that's kind of interesting because it works from the same ethos as what I just talked about. Like when I joined Low, there was record covers to make, and there was art to be made, and it was always kind of like, well, we're doing this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like we're not hiring anyone to do this. This is our band. Mm-hmm. We all have an aesthetic, so however this goes, we're just gonna figure it out for better or worse. And actually, last night when I was trying to sleep, I remembered that I don't think it was. Yeah, I just took a photograph for the first Low record that I was on, Long Division. It was just a photograph that I took of a light bulb in my apartment. But it was real organic in that way. And like I said, last night I was thinking of the first, we did an EP with Cranky Records, and we did a bunch of records with Cranky. Mm-hmm. But the record, Songs for a Dead Pilot, is a collage. It's actually one of my favorite Low covers, but it's a collage of a kind of anatomical head. I had totally forgotten this, but when I was thinking about this show, I actually just made that for Alan for his birthday. Mm-hmm. I just made him this collage, and I just gave it to him, and it just so happened that we were finishing up an EP, and he was like, "Thank you so much. Should we use this for the cover?" And I was like, "Yeah." But it was a lot of.
And there's trees in front of it.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really puts you in a surreal place, in a landscape. where you're imagining stumbling upon this giant head.
Yeah. But I mean, I think a lot of our, so I did that. We all got together on Secret Name. Things We Lost in the Fire was, us just, I had a bunch of pieces of stuff, and actually I'm really, really happy with Things We Lost in the Fire. But it was just this beautiful kind of process of, like, I had this giant book about the moon, like, that I picked up at a thrift store, and there was these, like, drawn maps of the moon, and I had done all these treatments of it, and not like, I was like, do you think we should do this? Should we think we should do that? And everybody was like, yeah, I don't know. It kind of works. It kind of doesn't. And then Alan had found this piece of metal on the ground, and he just kind of threw it on there, and it landed in the middle, and we were all like, huh, done.
Whoa.
Holding my head for the last of the race, pushing my body to get that embrace. It won't last. Hold on fast. It won't last. Hold on fast.
Well, I'm looking through your album cover. It's one of the bands that I think you did a great job capturing the music with imagery. It really does go. It looks how it sounds to me.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of, it's beautiful, but also there's a bleakness.
Yeah. I mean, this is the other thing I was thinking about last night is, if we're going back to my origin story, just sort of the trajectory of my life. I actually don't have any training in anything. Like,
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, I don't have any training playing the bass. I don't have any training in design. I don't have any, like, everything I've ever done is self-taught. But that makes it sound like I taught like it's coming from me. I mean, I think I'm in this band with two of my best friends. We're making this music and very steeped in, this is what we know what we're doing. We know what we're trying to achieve here. Because we have to do it every night, and back in those days, we had to do it every night, and it was not fucking easy. Like, that we were, they called us the quietest band in the world. I don't know that we were, but there was many nights where there was 5 people who got it and 25 people who were like, get out of here,
Oh my God.
But so, I mean, we were, the more we did it, the more it was, we honed in on, no, this is exactly what we're trying to do. And I think there's a shared aesthetic that evolved around that. So it wasn't like I or Al or Mim was trying to, like, what do we do that'll represent it? It was like, it was the aesthetic, and we just messed with stuff until it seemed like it clicked or it seemed like it fit. And when we got there, we kind of all knew it,
Seemed like at that time too, especially the era you played in, being quiet was kind of rebellious.
It was. It was.
It was definitely, you definitely stood out, but in a really great way.
Thanks.
So, okay, you're in the band. You're also making zines at that time, correct? Like those things are overlapping. Did you have like clients at that time? Were you making art for other people?
No.
No, just
I've had very few clients in my life,
okay.
which, you know, when I joined Low, I was 20 something, and when I left, I was 35 and married and had a kid. So yeah, I mean, it was all, I never, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later. Like, I never had to really make a distinction about like a career in how to make a living in art, you know, like, and again, this is from an era where I joined Low, and it wasn't like, oh, this is going to be this is going to be our job. We're going to make a living off of this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or with zines or comics or whatever. It wasn't, there wasn't a sign on the wall saying like, this is how you get rich and famous and successful doing it. It's like being able to pay rent and have a place to live was like a huge success, you know? And that was always the shining light in the sky that you were traveling towards. And,
Can I tell you also that saying you're self-taught for me is the mark of success because it sounds like you don't have debt.
yeah.
And for me, now that I did go to design school, and I'll be paying for it until I die. Okay, so you didn't have clients and you weren't really thinking of it as a job. This is a way to express yourself, involve yourself in the arts community.
Yeah, I mean, it was just what I was doing, you know. You know, when you're 23 and your best friends ask you to be in this awesome band, you're like, yeah,
sure,
I'll do that. You know, and I don't want to, you know, undercut the fact that, you know, 10 years later, by the time I left, we were doing pretty well, you know, like people were coming to the shows and buying the records and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I was I wasn't unaware that I was making a living doing this and that it was a job, because it was, you know, but, it just sort of, it was just kind of the path I ended up on, which, you know, I certainly tried to be appreciative of the whole time. But yeah, when I left Low, it was relatively brutal, you know.
Oh, wow.
Like my skill set is making comics specifically for weirdos, and that audience is what, like, you know, that audience is it's very, very small.
Okay,
you know?
So how did you get to Fantagraphics, though? That doesn't sound small to me. Is that a journey that you could take us on? Or
yeah, I mean, they, you know, I grew up, you know, that feeds into this as well. It's sort of, I guess that was the one piece I had in my head of like the way I could make this work is if, you know, the 6 to 7 people who were making a living in comics doing, you know, for lack of a better term, art comics. You know, we're talking like Daniel Clowes, Pete Bagg, Chris Ware. You know, I mean, those were the handful of people who could make a living doing the kind of comics they wanted to make. You know, and so yeah, I mean, Fantagraphics was as instrumental in me defining what I wanted to do as the underground or punk rock. I mean, they were sort of the same thing, you know. And, you know, Fantagraphics was, for lack of a better term, very, very punk when, yeah, in the 80s and all of that. They're just the way they approach everything. So, you know, I'd always wanted to be published by Fantagraphics, and but then the zine thing sort of led me on this other path of like, well, being published is not... The whole zine thing kind of turned this thing upside down of like, in the way you're taught to look at things is like, well, if somebody else publishes your stuff, that means you're good.
right.
Or that means like you're validated in this certain way. But actually, when you look back on it, that validation means like the only thing that means is that you made something that can connect with enough people on a certain way that it will make enough money to justify printing that thing, which is
Right.
not the same thing as quality.
Right. It's commerce.
It's commerce,
Yeah.
you know, and the zine thing was like, well, fuck that.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually make incredibly potent and powerful and iconoclastic and beautiful art. And that's a little bit separated from like whether or not you can turn that into money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like,
Yeah. For sure.
so all those things were kind of spinning together. But yeah, so that's when I started La Mano, which is, I guess, a micro publishing thing. I started that it just came from like me putting out my own zines. And at a certain point I was like, I'm going to call it a label and put out stuff by myself and others. And then later on I bought a offset press and taught myself to use that to publish other people's stuff.
Very cool.
Yes.
Was it a pain, or do you miss it sometimes?
Both of those things.
Yeah.
It was, I bought a AB Dick 360 for $250 and, had a printer friend who taught me sort of how to use it. And then I quote unquote upgraded to a nicer AB Dick. But yeah, it's, ironically now my day job is as a printer, but it is truly,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's
Cool.
truly one of the most frustrating. I think it's totally normal while you're printing to bleed, scream, cry, and like I threw trash cans across the room, and numerous like, oh, my hand just about went into the machine. Maybe this is not.
Oh, wow.
Maybe this is not a good idea.
I was just at the printer here, close to here, for my work the other day, and was just like, God, I love the smell. I love all the machinery. It's, I romanticize it because I've never been a printer. It's something, I'm like mesmerized by it. But I love a letterpress. I love a Riso. I like using those things minimally. Screen printing, all of that. But yeah, I never did it as a job. I went straight from collage and Xerox to the computer.
Yeah.
So I never had to use like mimeograph or like the old, even like the French curves or all the old tools that graphic designers use. So that stuff is very, I don't know. Probably the brutal reality of it is lost on me. But
Well, I
sure
mean,
does look cool though.
I mean, I have to back up now and say that like me saying I've never been trained in anything. I've been at this. So I quit being a comics professor about a year ago for some of the same reasons that you just mentioned, where I was feeling awfully strange about, feeling pretty okay about being able to be helpful to comics artists and, to sort of like share the knowledge I had to figure out myself. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I lied awake at night.
Can you say where you were teaching?
I was teaching at a place called Minneapolis College of Art and Design.
Oh, cool.
In Minneapolis. So they're, it was incredibly lucky for me because they're one of the only schools in the country that has a comic art program.
Wow. Awesome.
So that's what I did after Low.
Okay.
And, I feel pretty good about what I did there, but at the same time, like, there was never a moment where I didn't think like, oh, the only reason I've been able to do this is because I don't have any debt. And that I was training these folks to do this thing. And, it's very, the knowledge and what I was trying to give them everything I had. But I couldn't imagine trying to be in a cartoon, trying to make a living as a cartoonist with 100,000.
Now, 100,000 in debt. Good luck. But is this Wacom tablet art or is it paper?
It changed over the years. When I first got in there, I was like, y'all are learning to use a dip pen, and this is Bristol board, and you can,
cool.
And frankly, all the digital tools at the time looked like fucking garbage. So
Right.
I'm like, you're going to learn the real thing, and then if you can transfer that over to, but as the years went on, those tools got better and better, and the old man had to wrap his head around some of that stuff.
Have you used a Cintiq?
I have.
Oh, I love those.
They're kind of, it's gotten to the point now for me where it's sort of equal. Like I love.
Nothing is like paper, but
oh my God.
like nothing.
I hadn't drawn with a dip pen on paper for a really long time, and I think I was showing someone something, and I was just like, well, this is how you use a dip pen, and I hadn't picked one up in a couple of years, and I just like made a line, and it was damn near sexual. Like I was like, oh my God, I forgot about this. This is holy shit. Like this is the thing,
It is. You're using more of your senses or something. You're more connected. It is sensual in that way. But I'm not saying I like a Cintiq over anything. I'm saying as far as like digital stuff goes, that's about as close as I've gotten to that feeling where I can create. And otherwise, I'd rather just create separately on paper and then draw over it in the program.
Yeah. I mean, there's what you just said. I mean, there's great things about all those tools. It's just figuring out what tool works, like doing editing in digital as opposed to like getting whiteout and doing that whole thing. Like it's like my original comics pages. I guess it shouldn't be a badge of honor, but like I've seen a lot of people's original comic art, and my originals are some of the shittiest. Like there's so much fight in those that,
There's heart and soul.
I suppose I got that.
So you're here to do short run. What does this festival entail? Like I don't think I've ever been before. I think I've heard all about it. I don't know if I've been to the Flat Stock. That's different.
Right.
What is this like? Is it at Fantagraphics? Is it?
No, it's at, I should have the thing.
It's in Seattle Center.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's right. I'll edit that part. Yeah, so it's just small presses, artists.
Yeah, it kind of runs the gamut. I mean, there's some international folks. It's very, it's one of the shows that I think really centers around the, what the small press is and what it involves and what it means. People making their own stuff and in many cases releasing their own stuff. I mean, it's very different than like a Comic-Con or something like this. These are the kind of shows that have nothing to do with, it might still be comics, but it has virtually nothing to do with like Comic-Con or something like that.
By the time this airs, short run will be over this year.
Yep.
But it's an annual event. Is there like a website?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
check it out.
Yeah, I think it's just shortrun.org and
yeah. You're known for Sammy the Mouse. Is that right? Would you say that's your most popular?
I have no idea.
Okay. That's the one I had heard of. And I love it. And you do illustration for Ruinous for the podcasting network here because Joe from touring. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So speaking of touring, he has a podcast on the network called Tour Stories with Joe Plummer, and he interviews. You've been on?
Yeah.
Did you draw a picture of yourself?
Yeah. And it's one of the single greatest drawings I've ever done in my life. Oh. So,
check that out. I'll have all the stuff we're talking about at designfreakspodcast.com, or you can go look on this Tour Stories Instagram. I'm sure it's there somewhere. But yeah, I love your drawings, and it really humanized Tour Story. Like that's kind of what caught my eye when I first saw, before I was on the network, when I saw Joe's show. I saw the cassette tape, and it was a drawing, and to me that like really in the world, because podcasting graphics are hideous. They have been, and they're getting better, but there's still really bad ones, I'm sorry to say. Yeah. So just seeing real art was so cool.
Thanks.
And you've done portraits of, how many portraits have you done for the Tour Stories episodes?
Lots.
Yeah.
Lots.
They're great.
Thanks. Portraits are portraits are fucking hard, man.
What, did they torment you?
Well, I mean, I just think like actually, as a I mean, there's certain, as a artist or a designer, there's certain muscles that you flex and there's certain muscles that kind of atrophy a little bit. And getting a likeness of somebody is a very, very particular muscle, at least for me. And, I like, Numero put out this, a collection of one of my favorite bands of all time, but they did the complete Unwound, the box set.
Yeah.
And so I did, they asked me to do portraits of the three of them, for a live show. They included a live show, I think from Iceland or something in that box set. And so they asked me to do portraits of those guys. And, I did maybe 70 to 80 drawings of each one of those, just to try and like get a couple that were like fit what I wanted to do, and partly it's because they're friends, I think it's harder to draw people that but getting likenesses is really,
I think
it's tough, man.
I love the Perry Shell drawing.
Yeah.
You really captured him in a funny way. And Creed Bratton from The Office.
I've never met them. That's probably why they're good.
Yeah, it probably didn't stress you out as much.
No, it doesn't. Like every time I draw my kids, they look like monsters. It's like, oh my God, that looks like a.
Are they artists as well? Do they gravitate toward that?
My son Isaac draws. He started drawing a little bit. And it's pretty good. My daughter Flossie May.
Flossie.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, I think I was having this conversation with somebody last night, but like in all my years of teaching, I don't know if I believe all that much in talent. You know what I mean? I think people have a certain affinity for a certain thing.
Absolutely.
And then they practice, because I've had students who could draw like crazy and are just like, and their stuff never went any place. Yeah. They just was like, yeah, you can draw. And I've had people who couldn't draw a lick and worked their asses off and got to be really good,
Yeah, it's what you enjoy practicing.
Yep. But there are certain people who just have a thing.
Yeah.
Like you kind of get this on some level that's different than how normal people get it. And I feel like Flossie might have like every once in a while she does a drawing and I'm like, what the hell?
Oh,
like,
cool.
And for better or worse, as a dad who's an artist, I have to make sure I'm not like pressing her too hard on it. Like I got to make sure that it's like, this is fun and keep doing it because it's fun. Because if I'm like, you're really good at this, you better do it all the time. That's gonna.
We're going to art camp. We're doing this. Yeah.
Yep. And I didn't know how far we were going to get into this, but like I sort of during COVID, I kind of had a meltdown, and I was like, I don't know if I've been doing this my whole life, and I have to completely change my relationship to being an artist. Like I think I may need to stop for a while. But I mean, just to finish that thought, it's partly because I don't know what this is for anymore, and it's not fun. I'm doing this because of inertia and because it's all I know and because it's tied to how I view myself and my identity. And beyond that, I have no idea why I'm doing this anymore. And I think, you don't walk through the world only doing things that are fun. But I think a lot of people walk through the world doing things that make them fucking miserable. And I had to figure out a way to make it not make me feel miserable, or make me feel like what I'm contributing here to this shit show that we're all living in is in some way helpful or positive or that lives in a context beyond like I'm an artist, and that's how I make my living. Like, right now, it's like there has to be something, different level of engagement or a different level of conscientiousness, and it's hard to figure out.
Do you think having kids, do you think that affects that kind of pressure you put on yourself, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, like I'm a terrible business person. I mean, when you asked earlier what I did, it's like I'll do a funny animal comic, then like, a novel with no words, then like a punk rock record, and then like this incredibly like dark, so it's.
Sounds good to me, but I'm 17 years old forever, so there's something wrong with me.
But you know what I mean? It's like there's never anybody like, you can't, I think it's really hard for people to be like, Zak Sally does this as a brand, which we're all supposed to be, right? We're all supposed to be brands. Like, I can go to this person because I know I'm going to get this. That's what we've all ended up doing. Like, I'm going to you because you do this. And it's like, but I mean, I think that book in there, Recidivist, which I did, I originally did it in 2015, and I did it on 9 colors on the risograph, and then 1 pass of metallic silver on my offset. But that was and then it was just re-released this past year because I made 800 of the zine, which was all hand assembled and printed and all that.
Wow.
And I sold out of them. So my pals at Secret Acres put out a new, like, offset printed edition of that. But that whole book was kind of, in 2015, me trying to figure out, like, there's horrible shit coming down the pike. It's kind of a letter to my kids in a certain way. Like, I don't know what's going on, but shit's getting real, and I guess I'm making a comic about it because I don't know what else to do.
Does it taste like home only when your eyes are closed? Have you been away too long? Am I still in you? Ooh. Am I naked too? Ooh. Am I naked too?
So if you stop doing this what does that look like to you? Does it look like you don't want to draw as, what am I trying to say? To make a living, I guess.
Well, I lost my shit almost entirely. And so I think I'm still kind of putting together what that does or doesn't look like. In the... okay, here we go.
Yeah.
In the clearest way, for me, it was like, because the way to make a living as an artist, right, of a certain kind, is like, you don't listen to a David Bowie record because it sounds like Creed. You listen to a David Bowie record because it's David Bowie. You don't read a Daniel Clowes comic because it's Superman. You read it because it's Daniel Clowes. So it is certain, there is this part where it's like your identity is tied to the stuff you make, and that's kind of normal, but at a certain point you're like, that's not who you are, and what you make is not necessarily the same thing. You know what I mean? Like,
I hope not.
No, and it's sort of like, well, if you bust your ass making a comic for 2 years, and it's really good, and 500 people buy it. How do you separate that out from, like, it's like you're putting your identity out there and people are saying, like, yeah, I guess.
Right.
Or, not even, yeah, I guess. Like, the people who get it. But it's not in, like, real world terms. You working for 2 years on something and it's selling 500 copies in the world, that doesn't work.
I see.
You can't live doing that. And I kind of I had squeaked by doing that for 25, 30 years, and yeah, and it ended up just like, I need to kind of separate myself from that whole, as an art school world, from that whole paradigm. Like you are the same, like, well, fuck it. For any artist, it's like, the thing is, like, this isn't what I do, this is who I am.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a big part of that if you're like an actual
Capital
artist.
A artist.
Yeah. Like, this is just an expression of who I am. And I think you get to a point where you're like, wait a minute. There's a difference there. And there's ego in there that can get real tricky and all that stuff. And
so do you think that you could, with more ease of mind, illustrate diagrams that have nothing to do with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's what I like about working for the university, is like, yeah, I'm putting a bunch of work in and it's not representing me.
Yes.
But it doesn't bother me because I have other outlets, I guess.
And yeah. I mean,
maybe it should bother me.
No, I mean, I think for me, a year ago, I quit teaching.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other thing, but I quit teaching and I got this job at a letterpress place. And it's like my first 9 to 5 the only other time I had a 9 to 5 was like working for a punk rock t-shirt shop when I was 20. And it's like, we'd be like, are we done today? Let's go get beer, Yeah, I am doing something that I can actually, it's a great letterpress place and it's good people and I'm learning this trade. But at the end of the day, I'm done. And I think when you're a freelancer or, for 25, 30 years, you're never done. Like you're eating dinner and you're like, I should be working on this. Yeah, I have that. I gotta make a grand somehow. Like I should have this comic done. I should have this, whatever.
You feel guilty eating.
Well, you're just never off the clock,
Yeah.
and
bless all the freelancers out there.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. It's a tough gig that has all this stuff to it. So I think, me, just having a quote unquote straight job, it's like I get home and I have less time to work on art, but I get done and I'm done with that, and I'm starting to figure out how and what I want to do.
That's awesome.
But I think anybody who's coming out of COVID and in 2022 in any field doing anything who isn't rethinking what they do, how they do it, what it means, how to move through it. Anybody who's just like plugging on, like, I'm going to do what I've always done. I don't know how you can do that.
Yeah. And now it's like, midterms are coming up, and every outlet I have, like, especially during COVID, during the protests and all that, I was like, what, how dare I do a podcast about, art? I mean, at that time it just felt wrong, and it still, it still feels there's a little bit of an urgency to help.
Exactly. And like, how do you
pivot?
How do you pivot?
Yeah.
And like, how much is, how do you pivot in a way that's honest? And how do you pivot in a way that's helpful?
Yeah.
I mean, I think just like, so, me saying I melted down and all that, in no way it was horrible, but in no way do I think it was a bad thing or unnecessary. It probably was a long time coming. And And yeah, like right now it's that age-old paradox of which I'm from the Midwest, so maybe, like art doesn't put food on people's tables. It doesn't keep cops in my town from shooting more people. It doesn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's true.
There's a big but.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like humans believe in stories.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. It's your hero's journey.
Yeah, I mean, and like the reason everything is so, I'm, this recording, I'm terrified about what's going to happen Tuesday with the elections. It's just it's going to be a bloodbath, and it's terrifying. And we're artists, and sure, stories don't do any of that other stuff, but people having bad bullshit stories that are untrue and inhuman and lack compassion and lack human empathy, that's why we're here in this spot right now, because people are telling shitty stories that other people are believing.
It's not what they're selling, it's what you're buying.
Which one is that?
It is a Fugazi song, but I can't.
Oh.
It's from Repeater. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Fugazi.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. And people need joy. People need culture.
Yeah.
We don't need everything to be a bleak hellscape, even if, politics are scary. Artists always have a role.
Yeah.
Throughout all of human history. So, yeah.
I was hanging with my old friends Alan and Mimi this past weekend, and it was when the Twitter thing, when that whole thing happened. And like I'm not really a big Twitter guy, but I think it was on Instagram, and somebody put like, hate speech was up like 500%, and all these folks were just like,
oh yeah,
like it was just like, I'm gonna type the most terrible things I can over and over, and I read that the first thing in the morning, and I was on my ass for like 3, I just had to walk around town for 3 hours, like, okay, it's over, like just set the whole thing on fire.
Yeah.
And that was 3 hours of my life. That was like, okay, look what I just took in. And
that was troubling to read.
But, but that's what I like. That's what somebody's choosing to put out into the world. And it knocked my ass out for 3 hours. I have a new issue of Sammy the Mouse, and it's been done for 2 years. And for 2 years, I'm like, yeah, what we really need now is like a funny alcoholic mouse yelling at, like, yeah, that's super important. Like, oh, great, put that. So I'm like, who cares? I'm not putting this out. But then, I was talking.
People need it.
But that's what I mean. I was talking to Alan, and he was like, you getting knocked out for 3 hours, that's like, if I can put out my stupid comic.
Yeah.
And it brings however many people, like, they leave that being like, all right, I feel less shitty. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go be nice to someone,
Yeah.
Like, it
puts them in a better mood. People need to be in better moods.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
People need to
get off Twitter.
Yeah. And they need to, like, run into something that, in whatever small to large way, makes them feel like, oh, I give a shit about people. And that's the thing I've sort of latched on to, is like, okay, here's why I'm going to keep doing this in whatever mode I can figure out to do it,
Yeah, everyone's figuring out new modes. I'm glad you're going to keep doing it. Are you going to release the Sammy anytime soon?
Here we go. This is why I got excited.
Yeah.
There's a new issue of Sammy that I was actually hoping to get done for short run, but I should be done with it by the end of the month. But the thing that got me really excited is I found a newsprint printer. So it's going to be the shittiest looking. Like, it's like there's like 3 kind. The guys, it's the printer sent me 3. Like, here's our worst newsprint. Here's our medium newsprint. Here's our best one. And I looked at the word. I was like, oh, the worst. But for some reason that made me so happy of like just this thing that.
Okay, is it like Trader Joe's leaflet?
Yes.
Bad? Okay, good.
That's
what
how
I was picturing.
Yes. And that made me so, happy.
That's awesome.
Like,
I love it.
I can just, drive down the street and throw them out the window of my car and
Hell yeah. Well,
see who digs it.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me. Where can people find your work, or where do you want people to know, or where do you want to direct them, if anywhere?
I'm around.
Okay.
I think I have I can't remember where I'm at. I think I have I guess you can get my stuff at, I have a big cartel site where you can buy a bunch of this stuff. So it's La Mano 21
Okay.
at Big Cartel. Yeah, that's the small press imprint I have been doing for 30 years. So.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with me. I hope I'm not I feel like I'm taking up your time, so I don't want to keep you too long, but I really appreciate hearing about your process and everything you've been going through, because I think a lot of people have been going through the same kind of crisis in a way, especially creatives lately.
Yeah, and that's kind of it's not real comfortable, but I mean, I think, you have all these conversations with other people who do the same thing. Mm-hmm. You just kind of look at each other and you're like, what am I doing? What, and every time you have that conversation with somebody, it feels like it's your dirty little secret and it's their dirty little secret. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's important to talk about this stuff and figure it out.
And, for sensitive, not that everyone isn't sensitive, but some of us internalize more. Mm-hmm. And it's important for us to take time for mental health. And, a lot of creative people maybe do take things personally. Things keep us up at night. Things that we can't control.
Yeah.
And so, it's important to recognize that. And it's good to say it out loud, because everyone's just like, mental health, go do yoga. Okay, back to buying stuff and, being a consumer and
right.
whatever. Yeah.
And particularly, in a job where basically part of your job description is that you sit by yourself
Yeah.
a lot. You know what I mean? Like your job description is sort of like, hey, stew in your own juices. Like, see what comes out. Like, what, so I think it's a little bit more, it's a pretty solitary decision or choice that, is what you're doing. So I think it's, this short run, this community of musicians, artists, zine people, that's been there my whole life. And that has been the most consistent, thing that provides me, hope and makes me feel like there's people doing good shit in the world. 'Cause man, there's a lot of people not doing that. And
focus on the brilliant people.
Yep.
The kind, brilliant people. Find community, find like-minded community. It makes the biggest difference. Find Sangha. That's what we call in the Buddhist community. When you have Sangha, it's like, there's something magical about that.
Yeah. Because,
if you're an artist, it's dangerous to be alone.
Yeah. It is. And their community is what we're all needing and missing right now. So, yep.
We're human. Listeners, stay human. Reach out and give us compliments. Give me compliments. I'm the one who needs them.
I think your show is great.
Thank you. I think you're great. Thanks for talking to me.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Take a cup full from your hand. Wait for fall. Just leave me to the river. Let it cleanse my